The movie, The Marvels, had the worst debut in Marvel's history. The Flash, Shazam, and Blue Beetle result in $1 million loss for DC. Critics tear apart the films. Fans are divided, some make an effort to defend. But the problem is already real. Are superhero movies on their last legs? Has the dream come to an end? In recent years, superhero films have taken over cinemas worldwide. Shared universes, diverse characters, and billions at the box office have stirred a multi-billion-dollar market that also involves toys, clothing, and a range of products that have taken brands like Marvel and DC worldwide and across all ages. To the extent that from the 2000s onwards, superheroes moved from cartoons and comics to conquer not only the film industry but also TV, streaming, and the entire pop culture. All of this consolidated a series of concepts, slang, and a business formula that seemed infallible. More precisely, the Marvel formula, which managed to turn even lesser-known heroes into global icons, each film hitting the billion-dollar mark at the box office. However, in recent years, it seems that the formula has run its course. What do you think? Is it the end of superhero movies? And the tide has turned against major studios, especially Disney and Warner. The concern of those involved is already very real. But what happened? Is the end of superhero movies near? In this video, you will understand what happened to this industry and what mistakes are turning billions in profit into consecutive failures. Marvel and DC Comics. At the beginning of the century, both brands were confined to the imaginations and memories of people worldwide who fantasized and experienced different stories from masters like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Bob Kane, and many others. But in the last 15 years, the situation has completely transformed, and heroes have invaded cinema, TV, streaming, and pop culture, becoming a business that generates billions of dollars annually. This success propelled different studios, publishers, and especially the main Marvel and DC representatives. During this time, Marvel specialized in having movie box offices that exceeded $1 billion, an unimaginable feat for cinema, especially for superhero films, which until the beginning of the century were seen as a product for a niche of few adults and many children. It happened with films like Iron Man 3, the Avengers movies, and even with a female character with less appeal, Captain Marvel. All this success was on the rise from 2008 to 2019, when Marvel brought together all its characters in the film Avengers: Endgame. Gradually, the films began to have a very similar essence, with interconnected scripts that formed the so-called Marvel formula, combining action and emotion with a lot of humor. In this way, Marvel started testing more and more characters and achieving more success, leading them to plan a set of films and series with all kinds of comic book characters. On one side, the banner of diversity, and on the other, the market-oriented option of having almost a hero for each of the major consumer markets. In the same vein, DC, along with Warner, which holds the film rights to the publisher, also began to follow a somewhat similar approach to Marvel, with a blend of humor and a bet on almost every type of character. However, despite the optimism and the times of multi-million-dollar successes, it seems that the superhero formula is beginning to take a significant hit. Proof of this is the recent failures of films like The Flash, Blue Beetle, Shazam 2, and now The Marvels, which are expected to incur considerable losses. The movie starring Brie Larson as the protagonist had the worst Marvel debut, even lower than the 2008 film The Incredible Hulk. It is anticipated to suffer concerning numbers in the coming weeks. Furthermore, the loss of global revenue is already a reality. The so-called Phase 4 of Marvel, concluded in 2022, closed with an average revenue of $888.50 million per film. This represents a 28% decline compared to Phase 3, which occurred between 2016 and 2019. This is not to mention the difference in profitability, as the films heavily invested in marketing and promotion. Moreover, the approval of the films from both critics and fans has also declined. Previously, the average approval on Rotten Tomatoes, a site that compiles press reviews, consistently stayed around 80%, peaking at 88.2% in the third phase, but it dropped 64.5% in Phase 4. And these numbers still seem generous when compared to the opinions of critics and fans who have been criticizing the films. The reasons behind this decline are quite compelling. The first one is the saturation of the genre itself. Just as different types of films had their days of glory in the market and established trends in different eras, superhero films marked at least 2 generations. However, like any genre, the superhero trend may have reached its peak and is now retracting to a point where these films become commonplace rather than a major trend or fashion as in recent years. But the issue doesn't stop there, and whether we like it or not, it directly involves the studio's own greed. While studios released 1 or 2 films per year, fans could support the productions, paying increasingly higher prices for tickets at the world's major cinemas. Not to mention additional expenses such as popcorn, drinks, and even other costs like transportation or parking. This cost can multiply, especially for parents taking more than one child to the movies, making the experience quite expensive for the majority of customers. In this way, while films were highly anticipated events that occurred infrequently over long periods, over the years, the interval between one film and another has decreased considerably. Marvel itself proposed to release 4 titles in a year, meaning a very short interval of only 3 months between each. This is excellent from a fan's perspective but leads to an unappetizing calculation. This is because, in addition to Marvel's films, fans typically want to see movies from DC and other studios bringing their characters to the screen. Thus, the annual expense becomes very, very costly. Hence, a significant portion of the standard clientele has to choose which movies to watch and which ones to wait for on streaming or another platform. This means not every fan can support every kind of film, regardless of whether it is good or not. This problem became even more evident with the condensed schedule forced by the pandemic, where several films were delayed and ended up being released with an even shorter interval between them. In other words, there is an excess of supply for a demand that is insufficient, or at least for a demand that cannot afford all the offerings. This is not to mention the difficulty of having to watch previous movies and series to understand a new film, as in the recent cases of Marvel. With over 30 titles and numerous series, the offerings are so extensive that it intimidates those who want to start and discourages those who want to continue, and it is not an exaggeration to say that just within Marvel, there is already more content than the average fan can keep up with. Additionally, over time, studios have somewhat become accustomed to releasing a slew of interconnected films that lead to a conclusion, as seen in the Avengers movies. The problem is that these events may not even happen, as in the case of DC, or it could be just a way to keep the audience engaged, promising a lot and delivering little, as Marvel has been doing. In a way, studios turn movies into a kind of production line, with little differentiation and more or less the same narrative line. This gives the feeling of watching the same film over and over again, with different actors and characters. A clear choice of quantity over quality, which sooner or later saturates the audience, tired of seeing the same structure in the vast majority of films. Even worse, it gives the impression that studios see viewers as an orange that needs to be squeezed to the maximum, until there's nothing left but pulp. Not to mention the significant aesthetic decline in films, especially when it comes to special effects, the famous CGI, which has shown lower quality in recent years compared to its golden days. This indicates a rush by studios to release films, leading to complaints from graphic studios that argue studios are paying less and demanding shorter deadlines, making the activity nearly impossible. Moreover, studios have started making quite questionable market-driven decisions. In the name of the diversity flag, studios decided to promote various characters that cater to a large consumer market, even if these characters were not beloved or interesting to the general public. Additionally, studios saw a supposed great market opportunity in promoting new heroes that serve specific markets while giving them the impression that they can do without the characters that were successful up to that point. This decision aimed to expand audiences while simultaneously reducing costs. In the beginning, Marvel was extremely successful in introducing less popular heroes like Black Panther and Captain Marvel, representing important market niches for the industry. However, they decided to pursue a strategy that goes against everything they built over the years, in an abrupt and forced transition. They opted to destroy the foundation they had built to create an entirely new structure. Characters that took more than a decade to build were simply sacrificed. Iron Man and Black Widow were removed. Captain America was taken out of the scene, the Hulk became a fool, and Thor was transformed into almost a clown. It's as if the company told the audience that everything they saw, admired, and liked has now changed. Tough luck for them. All of this was done under the pretext of passing the mantle to new characters. In reality, it meant significant cost savings for Marvel, thinking they could avoid paying the high salaries of the original cast, including actors like Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and Scarlett Johansson, and simply replace them with new actors and characters catering to specific market niches. Proof of this is the choice to invest in films like Shang-Chi, an unknown hero of Chinese origin, specifically to please a market of 1 billion people. Additionally, the previously North American-based hero lineup becomes increasingly multi-ethnic to have direct or indirect representation of various countries and ethnicities. The situation is no different in the case of DC/Warner. For example, the gamble on the Blue Beetle movie to appeal to the Latin market, even including actress Bruna Marquezine to cater to the Brazilian market with a unique character created for the film. Furthermore, Marvel sheds the criticism that its original actors had similar aspects and opts for new, cheaper actors who fit the so-called diversity call. A strategy to please a vocal audience, signal to different consumer markets worldwide, and at the same time, save significantly on actors. Despite replacing all the original actors, Marvel has, in a way, found substitutes who essentially have the same powers and similar mantles as the original heroes. The problem is that the company simply discarded almost all the actors whom the audience had grown attached to for years. In some cases, it even ridiculed parts of the original characters, a clear disrespect for the previous work and the audience itself. It's as if Marvel were a bakery specializing in sweets and suddenly transformed all the sweets into savory treats, simply because it wanted to. Now, it offers generic sweets, claiming they have the same flavor just because they wear the same clothes, all to increase their profit margins. It might work, but it was too big a risk. Especially when indirectly, the decision also challenges the fan base created over all these years. In other words, to gain new customers, the company greatly disappoints all the other customers it already had. The decision to increase profitability has so far proven to be unwise, as Marvel spends less but is earning less and less. And public complaints are only increasing. This is because, besides going against everything it built in recent years, the scripts and dialogues also indicate a dual signaling. The company wants to make its content more comprehensive to strengthen its connection with the young audience, which not only buys tickets but also toys and licensed products. This automatically makes everything less worked on, with narratives becoming increasingly simplified to make the content more accessible to all ages, sacrificing the depth of plots and stories. There are also constant efforts to please certain groups and minorities. A market-driven decision that accelerates the process of substitution and deconstruction of characters established earlier. After all, it's not enough to replace Iron Man or the Hulk, someone stronger must be introduced overnight, as the studio no longer has time to develop the hero's journey and needs to create a character that caters to all interests immediately. A series of clumsy and abrupt decisions that seem like the studio simply put the pursuit of quick and immediate profitability above everything and anything. In this way, those who want everything may end up with nothing. Gradually, the studios undermine everything they have created. What about you? Do you agree with this analysis? Share your opinion with us.